Hello, listeners, and welcome to another episode of Drug Diversion Insights Quick Take. Today, we are diving into a corner of healthcare that affects almost every single person who has a hospital stay, and one which you may not give a whole lot of thought to. It's a complex gray area that kind of pits pharmacy care directly against federal law enforcement. So, think about this: a patient's out of surgery in severe pain. The nurse needs a specific IV medication. Maybe it's not even pain, blood pressure, some sort of IV medication compounded by the pharmacy, and they need it now. Well, in a perfect world, the medication's already prepared, waiting in a secure cabinet on the floor, and ready for immediate use. That efficiency, that ability to anticipate patient needs is standard practice in hospital pharmacies. They prepare small batches of commonly used IVs and infusions ahead of time to ensure there are no delays in treatment. Seems like common sense. But what if I told you this very practice, designed to help patients quickly, could be viewed as a violation of federal law? That's the tightrope that hospital pharmacies walk every day, even though you may not think about it. They're caught between the conflicting regulations of two government agencies, the FDA and the DEA. So, to understand this conflict, you have to understand the different missions of these two agencies. First, you have the Food and Drug Administration, the FDA. Its primary mission is to protect public health by ensuring drugs are safe and effective. The FDA understands the reality of hospital care, and their regulations, specifically under a provision known as Section 503A, actually permits what is called anticipatory compounding. This allows a hospital pharmacy to prepare limited quantities of medication before receiving a specific prescription based on a history of need. The FDA recognizes that a doctor's order on a patient's chart is a valid prescription and that waiting to compound a critical medication until after the order is written could harm a patient. From the FDA's public health perspective, preparing for the day's needs is a good practice. Then you have the Drug Enforcement Administration, the DEA. The DEA is a law enforcement agency. Its mission isn't about drug quality. It's about preventing the diversion and misuse of controlled substances. The DEA operates what is called a closed system of distribution, where every single dose of a controlled substance must be tracked from the manufacturer to the patient. The DEA rules were written more with retail pharmacy in mind. A patient walks in with a prescription and the pharmacist fills it. Under their strict interpretation, a controlled substance cannot be dispensed until a valid, patient-specific prescription has been issued. When a hospital pharmacy prepares a batch of pain medications, IVs, infusions, before the patient-specific chart order exists, the DEA can view that as not as dispensing, but as illegal manufacturing and creating a stock for general use, which is a violation. Here's the critical point. Being compliant with the FDA's rules is not a defense against the DEA. They enforce separate laws. This leaves hospitals in a bit of a precarious position trying to satisfy two contradictory federal mandates at the same time. With the risk of massive fines or even losing a hospital's DEA registration, which would be catastrophic for patient care, what can be done? How do hospitals navigate this? Well, the answer lies, like it does so many times, in risk mitigation and creating a defensible, transparent process. First, hospitals need a formal written policy. This isn't something to be left to informal practice. The policy should clearly define what is acceptable, low-risk anticipatory compounding, like preparing a handful of IV bags for surgery scheduled that morning, and what is unacceptable, high-risk compounding, such as making a huge batch of stock meds for the entire week. Second, and most importantly, is hyperdocumentation, as always. The key is to prove that every batch made was to meet a predictable and imminent patient need. This means retaining records of surgical schedules or ICU patient census data just to justify the batch size. Then technology can be used to create that unbroken audit trail, linking the lot number to a specific batch and every single patient chart order it fills. This way, you can show an auditor that 100% of the doses went to specific patients with legitimate medical needs. Finally, for high volume, non emergent compounded drugs, hospitals should consider outsourcing. There are specialized facilities, as you know, known as 503B outsourcing facilities that are registered with both the FDA and the DEA to legally produce batches of sterile drugs without patient specific prescriptions. Yes, it can be more expensive, but it completely shifts the legal risk for these products from the hospital to the vendor. So, in the end, this is a pretty classic case of a regulation not quite fitting real world practice and the tension between timely patient care and preventing drug diversion. For hospitals, the path forward isn't to stop this necessary practice, but to manage it through robust policies, documentation, and strategic planning. Don't just make up a certain amount and expect it to be okay should the DEA come in and ask you about it. You want to have a little bit more than just, we make about this much each day. It's a complex balancing act. It all happens behind the scenes to make sure that when a patient needs a critical medication, it is ready and waiting safely and legally. All right, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. And if there are any topics that you would love to hear about in a quick take, please reach out and let me know.